I believe we're supposed to be excellent and do excellent work and to take the gifts and talents that he's given us and honor him.
Bryan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Brock. I really appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. First, I wanted to say thank you for speaking this summer at CGDC. That was a real blessing to our community. And so thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do that.
Absolutely. It was it was a blessing for me to be there with you and everyone else. That was having so many people that are like-minded and want to serve and honor God with their talents and their gifts. I'm grateful, and it's a blessing, and it's amazing that God allows us to come together in that way.
Well, I told you and Sam and Josiah this, but it was also just really refreshing and striking, the humility and the admiration that you guys enjoy, that you just have for each other and working together. And so that was just really marked as well in my mind. So,
yes, absolutely. I hopefully it came across how much I love those guys. I love Sam and Josiah's heart and their heart for kids and families, and to tell stories that are meaningful. And even if it's not, the Green Ember is not a story that is overtly faith-based per se. It does point toward Jesus, absolutely. And so I love that about them, about their entire family, and about their ability to tell those stories.
And we'll get into that later. We know you have an exciting release that you just did with the game, but we'll make people wait. So let's start off with just about you. Tell me about yourself.
Yes, I can go all the way back.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. I grew up. My dad left when it starts like a tragic story, and I apologize, but it does show that how God works in our lives, right? So, but my mom, she had me when she was 30. My dad left when I was 2 days old, so she raised my brother and I by herself, and we grew up pretty poor in government apartments, and so. As you'd imagine, that upbringing could be tough. There were lots of abuse and things like that around in that type of environment. But I will say that there were some pretty amazing things that happened that God has been with me the whole way, because my grandparents, my mom's parents, were very influential. My grandfather was an elder in the church that they were in, and my grandmother was an amazing woman. In fact, there are, I think, 6 kids and grandkids that are named after her. And so, the only time I got to go to church was with my grandparents. So my mom would drop me off, and I would stay with them a lot. In fact, actually, even early on, my mom could not handle necessarily me as a baby in light of what had just happened with my dad. And so actually, I think the first 6 months of my life, my grandmother raised me. And so, but my mom is I love her, and I'll just brag on her for a second. She's very, very smart. She got her bachelor's in theater. Her minor was in music. Her master's was in classical literature. And so if you can imagine growing up in that environment where there's lots of drug abuse and general, verbal abuse and physical abuse and things like that, I had this mother who we'd watch movies together, and she would teach me about, acting. She would teach me about story, and she would actually literally stop, if we were watching a movie, she would stop the movie and say, "Hey, Bryan, look, watch what this actor does here. Do you see what they're doing?" And so we'd talk about that. She would talk about Shakespeare. She would talk about Beowulf. She would talk about the Iliad and Odyssey. She would talk about So as you can imagine, it's quite a dichotomy of an experience of growing up really poor and very dysfunctional, while at the same time having this amazing spiritual influence from my grandparents, but then also this sort of like academic, artistic influence from my mom as well.
Yeah.
And you only know later, looking back, like, wow, God really put some things in place for me that has influenced me greatly in my life and my purpose now. And so, but I continue to grow up, and I ended up acting myself. I always drew. I was always drawing, and I played football. So I was into sports, and just continued my journey. Still dealing with a lot of dysfunction in my family and being in that environment, but eventually went to college. Did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I became a believer, became a Christian. I was baptized at 19. And that's when I really, really started to focus on studying the Bible and getting in the Word. And during my college years, I would guest preach at small churches.
Oh, wow.
So like they would, like small churches that maybe they didn't have a full-time minister or whatever, and I would go or a preacher, and I would go and I'd actually preach in college, and then and teach Bible study. Even for the adult classes as well. In fact, one of my Bible studies, adult classes, where I taught a class that was called Modern Day Parables, where I took movies and clips from movies, and I would talk about how that story and how those films had all these biblical truths in them. And I would tie it to scripture. And so that was actually one of my favorite things that I ever did with teaching Bible studies was actually taking films and using them to teach truth. So it makes sense, obviously, that later I ended up majoring in film, and art was, it was an art degree with a minor or a emphasis in film. And then I was teaching myself animation on the side, and then eventually that led me to, basically working. At the time I didn't know anyone doing animation, so I was teaching myself animation, like any books or it really literally anything I could find to learn animation, and I spent an entire year after graduation actually learning and trying to teach myself animation until I got a portfolio at least good enough to finally get me an unpaid internship at Real Effects, which is they're based in Dallas as well, and got into Real Effects, and that's an amazing story. I could certainly tell, but God was involved in that, where He, I was working at Smoothie King and submitted my work, and then the Smoothie King, they offered me a job to make $32,000 a year to manage a Smoothie King, and then I went home and I prayed about it and asked God, what should I do? And then the next morning I woke up and I had an email from Real Effects saying, do you want to come in and be an unpaid intern? And I knew that was the answer, and then fast forward a month later, then Real Effects hired me for $37,000 a year to be a junior layout artist, which is the one that does the camera work and stuff. And so it's just God showing up throughout my life, just constantly showing up in key moments where things where I thought there was no answer, God would show up with an answer.
Yeah.
And so then I continued my career at Real Effects and went from unpaid intern. Then I was a junior animator. Then I was a senior animator. Then I was eventually an animation director. And then I was director of studio animation for that studio. And we grew really quickly. So over an 8-year period, it went from, I think, 20 people to over 600. And then left to start Brazen. And I'd always known that I wanted to tell stories that were meaningful purposeful, but do them in an excellent way.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Brock, you and I have discussed before that, unfortunately, there are things within faith media, whether it be video games, whether it be film, television. I think, unfortunately, there's been a lot of faith media that the quality and standards were sort of watered down.
Yeah.
And so even if the message was good, the quality wasn't good. And I believe that God made us to do excellent work. We are the term poema, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Greek, which is we are His workmanship or masterpiece in some translations, and so I believe we're supposed to be excellent and do excellent work and to take the gifts and talents that He's given us and honor Him. And so that was the reason we started Brazen, was for that reason. And, Brazen in the Old Testament is the brazen altars where you brought your best to God. And so that's why we called it Brazen. And it's also partly Romans 1:16, which is I'm unashamed,
Mm-hmm.
right, as well. And to be brazen with our faith, to be bold with our faith. And so, yeah, so that's, I try to get through it as quickly as I could there, but
that's good.
Yeah.
So what was it about animation that you fell in love with? Was there like a particular film or cartoon or something that sticks in your mind?
Yes, definitely. I would say, by far, I often talk about it in 3D and 2D, but I would say I saw Lion. I mean, I'd always watched animation growing up as a kid, and been and played video games. So I've been infatuated with both. But I ended up seeing Lion King, and that movie has so many things in it that are, if you want to talk about like a parable or modern day parable, and if you think about Lion King as a film, think about just the correlation. And again, whether it was intentional or not, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, as far as the filmmakers are concerned. But just the idea that there's a scene where Simba looks down and he looks down in the water and he sees the image of himself and his father, and then he ends up having that moment where his father's in the clouds and he says, remember who you are. And that type of storytelling, where again, that film is not overtly faith-based in any way, but there's so many things about it that are rooted in that scene, especially this Imago Dei, we are the image of God. And I just feel like that had a huge, profound effect on me, that I knew that storytelling, and especially animation specifically, has the ability to, you can watch animation or play games, and the stories, because of the medium and what it is, people tend to lower, like they kind of lower their guard, and they can accept messages that they might not be willing to accept in a live action film or a live action, medium. So, so there was that. And then, I would say Beauty and the Beast is interesting to me because, Glenn Keane, who's a believer, he animated much, or was in charge of much of that film in terms of the Beast. And, he talks a lot about how, there's that final scene where he turns, the Beast turns into a man. And that scene is so powerful because he talks about how when he animated that scene, he viewed it as us as sinners, and how Christ can make us a new creation, right? Go from a beast to a man. And so he animated it with that in mind, even though, again, there's no one has ever said that Beauty and the Beast is a faith film, but there was a believer that was influential on that film that animated in such a way that made it powerful for the audience, right? And so just knowing that you can tell stories with this medium and do it in such a way that you can touch an audience, even if you're not explicitly saying Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
You can show them Jesus and touch the soul with storytelling, and with specifically this type of storytelling. And so, I know that was a long answer to your question, but there are certain films that really have had a profound effect on me through the years, and my faith.
Did you know that back then, or could you feel it? Like, I guess I'm thinking about, a lot of people don't know how their faith and their work kind of integrate. They kind of keep it siloed. And I'm curious, back when you're working at Smoothie King and pursuing art, like, did you know that, like, or have a feeling that your career in animation could somehow be used for the kingdom?
So, so there's a story that's really interesting, which is like, I don't know if I knew it at Smoothie King, but I will tell you, shortly after that, really shortly after that, and just to keep it in perspective. So I was hired on a 3-month unpaid internship at Real Effects, and I didn't actually have enough money. Like I was newly married. My wife and I didn't have any money, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to last the full 3 months. And so again, that was God. I kind of already told you about the part about getting hired, but then God showed up again like a month later, because we only had enough money in the bank to last us a month.
Oh.
So I actually was getting ready to have to go talk to my bosses about, I don't know if I can afford to do this. And so I'd gone in that day. It was exactly a month. In fact, I could tell you it was in October. And so I'd started my internship on the beginning of October, and this was like the very end of October, like almost toward, like the 30th, 31st. And I was getting ready to go talk to my boss about, I don't know what to do. And he came and he knocked on my desk before I could even go talk to him. He knocked on my desk and he said, "Hey, come talk to me." And that's when he pulled me into the office, and he said, "Bryan, he said, you're not a," what did he say? He said, "So I know you want to be an animator, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He said, "Well, you're not very good." I said, "Okay." I said, "Okay." He said, "But you will be." And he said, "So, what I'd love to do though is I'd love to start you off." He said, "We just won it was a direct to DVD G.I. Joe movie for Hasbro." And it was one of those ones that was 45 minutes long, and it was one of those ones that they put in the toy. So you buy the toy and you also get the film. And he said, "So I want to start you as a junior layout artist doing the cameras and cinematography." He said, your degree was in film, cameras, composition, the software, which is Maya. So I'm going to start you there. And then so what I would do is I would do layout during the day, and then I'd go home at night and work on animation. And so again, and as I said, he said, "I'm going to start you at $37,000 a year," which was, again, just the month prior was, $32,000 with Smoothie King. And so, within that period of time, Big Idea had gone under, Big Idea, VeggieTales. So Big Idea had gone under, and we had hired, Real Effects had hired a bunch of sort of key people from Big Idea. And so that was amazing for me, because I had been following Big Idea and VeggieTales for a while, and I loved, the silly songs and all those things. And so all of a sudden there was an influx of people that came in, and we went to a lunch, and we were going around the room, we were talking, and I like to ask the question even now I like to ask the question, "Hey, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself later in life and your career and that sort of thing?" Mm-hmm. They're going around the room, and finally it came back to me, and they said, "Well, Bryan, what do you want to do?" And I said, and I remember it was kind of funny looking back on it, because I just sort of put it out there, and I said, "Well, I would love it if one day I could maybe I have a studio that could tell stories that honors God the way that Big Idea did, but But what if it was like at a really high level quality? Like what if you could do it like at a Disney or Pixar level? And I just remember putting that out there, and that was so crazy to me thinking about it now, Brock, is I put it out there. That was the beginning of my career. That was that was like the first month that I was still an intern, right?
Yeah.
And then to fast forward and see that thing that God put on in my heart eventually came true. And that's what Brazen, that thing that I said is what Brazen is, right? And so anyway, I praise God for it, because clearly he has, again, that's why I told the story of how I grew up, is because if you just look back at my life, it's like God has literally been guiding and directing and putting things in my path to help me get to this place, right? For what I believe is the purpose, is the reason why I'm on this earth. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What's the best smoothie at Smoothie King?
Well, okay, so I have to. There's the young Bryan who could basically eat anything from Smoothie King, and so that one's called Peachy Keen, and that one is basically, it's Haagen-Dazs ice cream with peaches, and that's a shake, really. It's not really a smoothie. So that's what I loved back then. Now, actually, when I go to Smoothie King, I'll get it's called the Peanut Power Plus chocolate. So it's basically peanut butter and chocolate, but it's more of a muscle builder type smoothie. So
the Smoothie King still in your life, it sounds like?
Absolutely. They're right by my house. So yes, definitely.
Looking through your career here, I'm really curious about your work with Universal Studios and the rides. How much different is creating animation for a ride than like a film or something on a single screen?
Oh, wow. So I had the honor of being animation director for both the Simpsons ride at Universal and also the Minion ride at Universal. And that is really a different process, because in both cases you have essentially what amounts to it needs to feel like one seamless camera, right? Moving through space. And then also you have the hydraulics. So you have the developers or the programmers that are at Universal. So you have to make sure that the camera and the moves that you do with the camera are going to work with the ride, so you don't make anyone sick, right? And so there are basically that process of going back and forth, and we had to do that a lot, which is you would animate the camera, and you really had to make sure the camera, with a ride, the camera, I'm not going to say it's more important than the animation performance, because they have to work together. But if the camera doesn't work, which means the ride doesn't work, then you're going to cause people throw up and be sick and have a horrible experience. So you have to basically fly back and forth, where you do the camera, you fly to Orlando. In this case, fly to Orlando. They would program the camera back into it. You would actually get in the ride itself, and you ride it yourself and see how it feels. And then you're basically taking notes and saying, okay, yeah, that section is too sharp. We need to change the tilt of the camera or the speed or whatever. And then fly back and then make the adjustments and then fly back out there. And so,
wow.
Oh yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Have you made yourself sick with something you made?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, sick or like whiplash. Yeah. Like, oh no, that's too hard. Absolutely. Yes, for sure. So, yeah.
I was working on a VR project, and I think I inverted one of the parameters or something, and like the camera did opposite of what my brain was expecting, and instantly sick. I was like, oh, this is...
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And you have to, and that's a good point, because you have to, whether it's a ride, or whether it's a film, or whether it's a video game, you have to really sort of like separate yourself almost have an out of body experience in a way where you put yourself in the position of the end user or the end viewer, and basically say, okay, now I'm not the filmmaker, or I'm not the creator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the person. I'm the audience now, and literally try to separate yourself from that. And in fact, it's interesting. I heard people who have worked with John Lasseter, and they've talked a lot about why he was so successful at Pixar, and they said that's actually his superpower. Mm-hmm. is his ability to somehow detach himself from the film that he was making, to where he can view it from the audience's eyes and not
be objective about. Yeah.
Yes. And what's amazing is that allows him to be not defensive with notes, right? So so people are like, oh, this section doesn't work, or this scene doesn't work, and he can totally sit in a room and have people beat up his film, and he's fine. He's totally okay. Yeah. And so I just think that's a really powerful thing as a creator of any medium to be able to learn how to do.
Yeah, and as a Christian, I think as well too, just not being defensive and being open to truth and criticism. Yeah,
right. Yeah, because how are you able to? And you know this term. Are you able and willing to allow people to call your baby ugly? Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any lessons learned with the rides that have like translated to games, either in terms of like working with engineers or any of that back and forth process?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Let's take something as simple as not simple. It's all hard, but let's take something like making sure that you're animating the cycles. So let's say you're working on a game, and you're working the animation cycles within the game, which is, you're talking about gameplay and responsiveness and things like that. And the ability, and then, so you've got animators and artists trying to make that work, and they're trying to make that look as good as they can. But then you have developers that are saying, well, listen, for this gameplay to work, we have to, we can't use that many frames in the cycle, or it can't take that long for that move. And so having the artists and, where art and science meet, and having those people work together collaboratively to where they're both trying to help each other to make for the best experience. And so that definitely is the case in making a ride film at a theme park. And it's certainly the case in making a video game, where it is truly collaboration. It's not like one serves the other, or this one serves that one. It's you have to work together to get the experience to work. And so, even with a game, you're redoing those cycles over and over and over, and you're working with the developers over, and you're plugging it back in the engine, and you're like, okay, how does that work? Okay, how does that play? And that's where all the game testing comes in, right? And so that's just one example, but you're absolutely right that you have to work together, and it's constant, and it's just this round robin, or this very cyclical feedback loop that happens between the teams over and over. Yeah.
Looking at your Brazen Animations, again, this portfolio, it's pretty amazing. You guys are doing work for top IPs across games and film, and even faith-based stuff like The Chosen. Do you have a project or something that, from your Brazen work that like you're most proud of? I guess it could be even back before Brazen.
Definitely. Well, I would say before Brazen, I can give you two answers. Before Brazen, I would say one of my projects I'm most proud of is there were two at Real Effects, and so one was faith oriented, and one was not. But so the non-faith one was I got to be animation director on. It was a series of Looney Tunes short films that were theatrical, and they were also, at the time, they were stereoscopic as well. So they were theatrical, and you would put the glasses on. And the reason I have always been really proud of that one is because that was one of the first projects that we did at Real Effects. Real Effects eventually went on to do feature films, and but that was in a period of Real Effects where we were trying to grow and push the quality level of what the studio could produce in order to do feature films. And so with those being feature film shorts, and they were with these beloved Looney Tunes characters for Warner Brothers, the Warner Brothers client had said that they had spent years trying to figure out how to get the 2D sensibilities that were in the Looney Tunes into 3D animation. And they had struggled quite a bit. Like people were still struggling a lot to try to get, like, how do you make Bugs Bunny look and behave and feel like the animation style of Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck or, Roadrunner, Wile E. and Roadrunner. And so what Warner Brothers had done at the time is they had basically decided, well, if we can't make it look like those classic cartoons, what we'll do is we'll just create something different that's like Wile E. and Roadrunner. They essentially redesigned the characters completely, and they were just another thing.
Okay.
So that it wouldn't be compared. Well, the problem is when we were awarded those short films from Warner Brothers, and my good friend Matt O'Callahan was at Warner Brothers, and he had they had sent over the models or the designs for the models, and they looked like the best way to describe it, they kind of look like Tiny Toon Adventure versions. They were like, it was Wile E. and Roadrunner, but it was like, but they didn't look like themselves. They like had big heads and like big, like their ears, big head and a pot belly and like big feet. And like, it just didn't look like, Wile E. and Roadrunner. And the problem for me is I was concerned that first of all, I didn't want to do those versions because I was concerned that people would see them and say, well, Real Effects basically ruined, the Wile E. and Roadrunner.
Yeah.
And so I was talking with Matt about it, and Matt was like, yeah, no, Brian, I kept telling him, I was like, Matt, we cannot do, like, there's got to be a different way. He's like, I know, I've talked to the executives at Warner Brothers, and this is what it's going to have to be. And so what I did was, I told the team at Real Effects, I said, listen, we have to somehow figure out how to do this and make it look like the Chuck Jones 1950s, the versions that we know and we love. Yeah. We have to find a way to do this. And so what I had the team do is basically we were still in the modeling and rigging phase. And I had them model a version that looked like what they had sent us. And then I told my rigging supervisor, I said, and remember, I'm animation director, so I'm talking with him, and I said, open up all the channels on the rig. So what that means is, on a character rig, a lot of times you'll lock the channels so that you can't really stretch or squash as much. And I said, just unlock everything, and then just let me play with it. So I took Wiley home over the weekend. And I took the model that we had, and I literally just started pushing and pulling him and scaling his body and changing the proportions. And I took the original model sheet from Chuck Jones, and I started to pose him to look like the Wile E. Coyote that we all know and love. And so we had a meeting the following Monday with Warner Brothers, and it was on a call. And like a Zoom or whatever it was, and I told the production manager, I said, don't send this right away. Wait till like 5 minutes before the call and then send it. And so we sent it so that they had basically both versions. They had the version they asked for, and then they had the version where it was Wile E. posed and all the and I'll never forget. I mean, for as long as I live, I'll never forget when the camera popped on. Matt did this, and he said, Brian, you're going to get me fired. And so I said, Matt, I'm not trying to get you fired. That's not my intention. I said, I feel really I feel like we have to make these characters. People are going to blame us if we ruin these characters.
Yeah.
So he goes, okay. Well, I've got an executive meeting this afternoon. I'll present it. So that's what he did. He presented the one that they had said,
mm-hmm.
and then right after that, he presented what I had done over the weekend. And then once they saw it, the executive said, okay, fine, let's do it. And so then once we got the green light to do that, then we went all out. I mean, we basically like, okay, we're going to animate the style of the Looney Tunes. We're going to do smear frames and multiples. And at this time, you have to remember, this is way before Spider-Verse or Peanuts or any of the ones that had done any sort of like that type of thing where you're basically trying to push CG to feel more 2D. And so that year, that first short, the first short that we did was shortlisted for the Oscars, a VES nomination and an Annie nomination. And there was just a sense of like a real accomplishment with actually moving the industry. I felt in some ways moving the industry forward in terms of like what 3D animation could be moving forward. Mm-hmm. So that's one. The other one is I got an amazing chance to work with Yarrow Cheney and his wife Carrie, and we did a Christmas special called. At one point it was called The Very First Noel, and now it's called The Three Wise Men. And it was a 22-minute Christmas special that aired on ABC, and they look like little miniature ornaments. But the voice was done by Andy Griffith just before he passed. And it was about the three wise men going to see Jesus. And I still love that. I love that project. I was very emotional the whole time making it, because it was the first project I'd ever worked on that was overtly faith-based. And and Yarrow went on, and Yarrow became after that he went to Illumination. He was the director on The Grinch. Oh. And he was actually the art director that defined the Despicable Me style as well. Oh. Yeah, and so Yarrow is amazing believer, and his wife Carrie. So those are my two projects that I love the most, and again I think you can hear the pattern, right? It's pushing quality, and also there's faith involved, and I just think those two things about wanting to be excellent for God, right? Like wanting to do excellent things and tell stories that are redemptive, and at Brazen, of course, we have our own IP, like Tempest is one of ours, and so there are things that we still are doing and want to continue to do, and I think that over the last couple of years at Brazen, God has blessed us with. We've still worked with Warner Brothers at Brazen. We've worked on Marvel and things like that. But, God has been bringing us projects. We worked on the He Gets Us campaign. We've worked on the Chosen animated series. We've worked on the Green Ember. Yeah. And so what God has done is he's this mission and vision that he's sort of put forth for Brazen, even though it's taken us a while to where we've gotten to the point where we can finally start working on these types of projects. God is bringing them to us now, and it's been absolutely amazing, and really a true blessing that we can finally start to do the thing that we set out to do to begin with. So, yeah.
So where do you go from here?
I think that God has been putting things in place to where, what it seems, and his ways are higher than ours, right? And so, for me to know exactly where God's going to take us, but where it seems he's taking us is where, a combination of working with other like-minded people that are, believers who want to tell redemptive stories and we work with them on their stories, and we help them as a service provider, right? In a sense, in terms of like, we work with them, we help them, we partner with them on these things. And then God has also been opening doors for our own intellectual property, the stories that we have internally at Brazen as well. And, and that's not to say that we're still not going to be able to work on the Warner Brother projects or the Marvel projects, or, we work on all the John Madden football games, which is great. But I think that God is really, this is an interesting time culturally and within the world, where I think there's a yearning and striving for redemptive and meaningful content. And I just feel like people now are really reaching out to us more and more to help them with that, with their stories. And then also people coming to us about our stories as well. And I would love if Brazen became a company where it allows people to come together to tell these things. Cause there has been a period of time historically where like there are a lot of believers that wouldn't necessarily work together. They were kind of in silos. They were doing their thing and they're doing their thing. And I just think that God's bringing people together, for the kingdom to work. And it almost is like God's saying, okay, you can't be separate anymore. It's time to be together and use your collective talents together. So does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think one thing in Christianity, we kind of gloss over things. We expect, if God's given us a dream or something, that at a certain point he just kind of clears things out of the way. Have there been challenges since launching Brazen?
Oh,
like people see the success, but they don't know about the challenges that you.
Absolutely. Wow. The short answer is absolutely yes. There's a much longer answer there. We have, especially as you get closer to fulfilling the mission and vision, it does seem like there are more spiritual attacks that come, and Satan wants nothing more than to, he's the accuser. He wants to divide people. He wants to, in some ways, he wants to tempt. We've been offered projects that would go completely against our values, that with very large budgets that I've just simply had to turn down because, and that it is such a large budget that it would change the trajectory of the company, right?
Yeah.
And but it's not who we are, and it's not what we're about. It's not what we're gonna do, and so there's been that. There's been maybe people that both internally and externally trying to attack the company in different ways. And there's financial challenges that come with running a company, of course, right? And so I feel like that how should I put it? I don't want to sound like a victim by any stretch, because God has actually been the one taking care of us the whole time. But I do feel like in some ways Satan has thrown a lot at us to try to get us to fail. And but God keeps showing up, man. I mean, I go to work every day feeling like I'm surrounded by angels protecting me, seriously. And I know that as we continue that as we find more, let's call it more influence in culture, I think that Satan will try even harder, right? And but I think that at the same time, God finds a way to refine you through that and through those processes and try to prepare you for that. And I definitely feel like that has been the case where these challenges have been difficult, and they've been hard to endure in some cases, but also God has been refining the same way he refines a fire and tries to purify the gold, right? And so and I think that's to get us ready for the future of what Brazen is going to be, and to fulfill the mission and vision that he set out. Yeah. Did that answer the question, by the way?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Tell me about Brazen Games.
Yes. So, the evolution of us in games has been interesting in that when we first started, when we very first started the company, we were doing mostly like ad agency work for agencies like commercials, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, things like that. We did some work for the Dallas Mavericks, for the Jumbotron. And then we made a conscious decision, a purposeful decision to pivot into doing marketing and like game cinematics. Because what we found is we just found that the games industry, I'm trying to be careful and diplomatic here, so forgive me, but the games industry seemed to be an industry where the clients appreciated our work a little bit more, if that makes sense, in terms of like appreciate the artistry and those things. So, so we pivoted into that, but we were doing game cinematics, and they were pre-rendered, like using Maya, and then after a while, the game studios were like, "Well, can you work in engine? Could you do cinematics in engine?" And we were like, "Yeah, we can do that." So we Unity and Unreal, and we started doing cinematics with an engine, and then that turned into, wow, we love your work so much. Could you actually help on the dev side? Meaning, could you do cycles and the lighting in the game, and could you do? And so that's when we started getting the Frostbite is EA's engine, and we started getting into like all these other studios, their proprietary engines, and working in those. And so it just became this really interesting evolution of doing animation, cinematic, just purely cinematics, to in-game cinematics, to cutscenes, to in-game animation, lighting, effects, and pretty soon we realized, wait a second, we're learning how to make games, right? And so then that's why it's been so amazing working with Sam and Josiah, is that I've talked with Sam for 8 years about making a feature film, making a series, but then this opportunity of what if we could make a game together, and so we were like, yeah, let's do it, and so it's funny because I bought BrazenGames.com like 11 years ago. But not knowing when or if we would ever use that URL, or that brand, and then suddenly here we are, we made a game, the Green Ember, and launched Brazen Games as a division of Brazen Animation, and then we already have other game projects we're working on, like development, like, hey, we want you to build our game. So it's funny how God works, man. He just he is so amazing in the way that he guides our paths and where we go, and you never know till you look back. Like, that's why, just think about that. I bought that URL not knowing what would happen eventually, right? And so and then when the opportunity came to launch Brazen Games, it's like, well, here we are. So anyway, it's been.
Are you a gamer?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah. So I'll tell a quick story. So one part of the way that we won the Madden, the Madden, because we've done the last 7-8 years of Madden, and then we've done the last 2 years of the college football game for EA Sports. And part of the way we won that is because I started playing Madden, like, I think the first version. I definitely because I have every John Madden football game that's ever come out. I have a copy of it. And when I was in college, I would enter Madden tournaments and everything. So when we were talking to EA about doing work for them, I literally said, when we were talking, I said, I just want you to know how massive of a gamer I am. I mean, not just Madden, but like, I told them, I said, I own every copy of Madden since it's come out. And they're like, what? I've never even heard of anyone like doing that before. Like, that's crazy. And so I guess how excited I was about the game, and I've played it every year. And like I said, would enter tournaments and things like that. They're like, wow, I guess we need to work with these guys. And so yeah, I mean, like all the Marios, I'm definitely a gamer. And so, I love video games. So, and it's a little sad because I have two daughters that they're not as huge of gamers, but I have like I have a room in my house. It's like, it's sort of like a man cave. It's like a little man cave, but I've got games and stuff. And I'm always trying to get my girls to come play with me, and they'll play Mario Kart with me, but like they're not, but yeah, man. And the whole studio is that way, by the way. Like everyone in the studio, they're huge gamers here. So, it's been great.
How did you become friends with Sam and Josiah?
Wow. Okay. So let's see. How did that happen? Someone had told them about us, and they reached out, and I cannot remember if it was like a cold email that they reached out. It definitely wasn't. It wasn't an introduction. I think they might have just reached out to us cold. But I distinctly remember. You have to remember how long ago this was. But I distinctly remember that after we talked to them, they immediately scheduled a meeting at the studio. Like they came to the studio, they saw what we were doing, and actually right off the bat, we were talking about doing a feature film back then.
Okay.
I know Sam eventually wants to do a feature film and in a series. It just hasn't been the right timing. But yeah, I mean, we hit it off right away, and have been friends ever since, and have stayed in touch, and check in on each other. Send a text, "How you doing, brother? Praying for you." So even before making the game, we had just stayed in touch all these years. Yeah.
And when they reached out, did they know you were a Christian, or?
I think someone had told them that, hey, you might want to look into Brazen because I think you guys share the same values. And so, someone was funny. Someone was funny early on at Brazen, or not at Brazen, but someone was funny early on. They were talking about Brazen because I feel like we're pretty upfront about our faith. Like if you look at our LinkedIn and you look at our posts and things like that, and I feel like I'm open. Obviously I'm open in podcasts about my faith, but people have said that for some reason they view Brazen like they say we're like sniper Christians, and I was like, what does that mean exactly? I don't know what that means. They're like, well, you're open with your faith, but it's not always completely like apparent. Like if you go to our website, there's a lot of like metaphors in our website, but maybe it's not overt. And they said, so we like that because like a sniper Christian is good because they never see you coming. And I'm like, wow. And so I don't know if that's still the case, but I know that's what I was told. Right. So, but it's funny because I feel like I'm open with it. So if people don't know, I don't know how they don't know at this point, but, so yeah.
So you've been talking to them for years. You just recently launched, Green Ember, Helmer and the Dragon Tomb, November 18th. It's the 21st now. So how did that eventually come about then?
He had reached out and he had said, because he wasn't aware that we were already making games ourselves. Like because we have we have our own IP. We have our own games, and he wasn't aware of that. He had only seen the animation stuff that we've been doing, and so when he reached out, he was like, "Hey, we're thinking about wanting to make a game, but we're trying to figure out where what we want to do and exactly what kind of game we want it to be and that sort of thing." And I said, well, we're making our own game, right? And he's like, "No, I didn't know that." And so then we did a call, and I actually presented him, and I showed him our prototypes and stuff for our game. And he's like, "Oh, this is he saw it and he said, 'This is amazing. This is awesome. I had no idea that you guys were doing this.'" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, we've basically been working everyone else's game to this point. And we're like, well, why don't we make our own game? And then it was just perfect timing where he said, well, then let's working together on this game. And I said, absolutely. And so then what we did was we presented him with several different types of like genres of games. Like we were showing, obviously what we landed on eventually was sort of this like Tunic mixed with Zelda, kind of that top down 3/4 isometric. But we showed him a bunch of different genres of games. Like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. We did a full deck presentation. We talked about, art style, things like that. And so he eventually, he fell in love with Tunic and that sort of Zelda approach for Helmer and telling his backstory. And that character in that series, Helmer's sort of like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the Green Ember series. And so being able to tell his backstory and having that companion book that he was writing at the same time, and it just felt like a great approach, and it's worked out really, really well. And kids we did a ton of play tests, but kids love the game, and so we're extremely excited about that and about being able to further the lore and that world and helping Sam do that with this game. So yeah, that and the collaboration has been amazing with them, as I said before. I love working with them. Yeah.
And how far was so there's a book that goes along with it too, right? And how far into the writing was Sam at the point when you started talking about that?
He was actually, he's funny. He was actually kind of at the beginning.
Okay.
So it was actually it was like the book and the game were being done at the same time. And so he was clearly, it's all in his head. So he's ahead. He was always ahead of us, clearly. But it was that's what made the experience so great, is because they were kind of being done in parallel.
Mm-hmm.
It was making sure that the story that he had in his head and that he was writing actively was also being translated properly into the game, and also striking the right balance of just how much story do we get into the game, because you obviously don't want to bog the game down with stopping down constantly with the story. Yep. So how do we tell this story while making it still action packed and fun for the players as well? And so it was a good balance of he's writing a novel, and then also taking the key parts of that story and making sure that we weave it into the game, into the narrative as well. Yeah.
Can you talk a little about just some of the technical details of development, like engine, size of team, timeline, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did it. So the whole, from start to finish, was a little over a year, maybe a year and 2 or 3 months, something like that. And which is pretty quick, right? That's a pretty fast development. And that's starting from scratch, right? That's like, gray boxing, and I mean, you're just, we had no designs, no characters. We're just working, we're working from scratch. But the overall team, I think the final count, being like, was it like somewhere between 12 and 15 people, I think, is where we finished all told. And And, we ended up having to, the core development team, I think the developers themselves, I think that was 7. But remember, we had art department, so I'm considering everyone involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Creative direction and art director and all that stuff. So, it was, again, a collaboration amongst their team, our team, and the technical hurdles. We were working in Unreal, and so the game is built in Unreal, and really trying to make sure that we could constantly optimize, knowing that it was good. It was Mac, PC, iOS, Android, and then now Switch. And so really trying to work hard to make sure that we didn't end up with a bloated game, because you clearly know your experience, that it's pretty easy. You can release something for Mac or PC, and then suddenly you need to port it to, a mobile device, and the thing can't run.
Yep.
Right. And then the problem is, then you end up getting like really bad, the reviews come in that really bad because the thing's not responsive. And it's like, even if it is a great game, they can't play it. And so we just wanted to make sure that we were trying to keep all that in perspective. And it caused us to make a lot of decisions creatively, even technically and creatively, to help, how do you create this big world, or what feels like a big world, but how do you keep it optimized? So, for example, there are certain levels where you'll see the player won't notice, but we know, and we built it. You go in and you build a tree, and then let's say you build 3 trees, and you know that you're going to use that tree, but you design it in such a way that you can constantly turn those trees and create a forest. Mm-hmm. And that forest looks like a forest with and all the trees look different, mm-hmm. but it's actually just 3 trees that you're using over and over, right? And so it's just things like that. The way we approach the texture, the textures in the environment, and the models, make sure those are optimized. And so there was just a lot of things that we had to consider the entire way through about, okay, how do we keep this with the timeline, the scope, and also the platform, and how do we make sure we can make this a great gameplay experience and maintain the fun of being fast and fluid and those sorts of things at the same time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you think about your career and the journey that you've been on, what's one major thing that God's taught you?
Oh, well, lots of things, but I think the biggest thing, and you use the word career, but I have to look at it more like my life.
Sure.
And I mentioned it earlier, which is, there have been a lot of challenges, I would say. A lot of great things and amazing things in my life, but there have been a lot of challenges in my life, growing up the way I grew up. And, even in college, there were struggles with, I couldn't, it took me, I didn't mention this before, it took me 7 years to get through college, because I kept switching majors and schools and things like that. And God has shown up so many times, and I've looked back in my life and seen Him where He's always taken care of me. And I feel like there's this constant reoccurring theme of, Bryan, you just have to trust me. Mm. And so knowing that He has a plan for all of us, for our life, and then knowing that we just trust Him and put our trust in Him, He will come through. There's never been a time where there's been times where it has looked dire, and I have thought, is this the end of Brazen? Is this the end of whatever? Right? And God has just shown up over and over and over and over. And at some point, he has shown up so often in my life that there should be no reason for me to ever doubt again. Because he's always there, man. He's even when I don't think he's there, and he'll answer my prayer, and not in a Santa Claus way too. Like when that situation, for example, when that situation happened with the Smoothie King and that opportunity, I went home that night and I got on my face like David, and I literally prayed, and I was in tears, and I was like, I knew that I wanted to do animation. But also my prayer to him was literally, God, not my will, but yours. And if your goal for me is to be the Smoothie King guy, right? Then that's what I'll do. I'll do whatever it is that you want me to do. If your plan is not for me to do animation and to be this thing that I feel like I'm supposed to do or being called to do, then just the thing was my plea to him was just tell me what you want me to do. Just tell me.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever you want me to do. And like I said earlier, the crazy thing is I had that prayer, and I got up the next day, and my job was to actually open the Smoothie King store. Like I opened the store every morning, and I always checked my mail before I went to work. And I opened my email, and it was an email from Real Effects saying, "Hey, we'd love for you to come in for a 3-month unpaid internship." And it was literally that next day. And I've had so many situations like that, Brock. I can't. There have been times in Real Effects' history where we literally had no money, right? And I didn't know where the money was going to come from. And suddenly a check hits the account, right? If you're a business owner, you run a company long enough, you're going to have those ups and downs. I mean, it just happens. And God he just keeps showing up, man. And and the message is, Bryan, just trust me. I've got you. I've got it. And it's not me. When I say this, it's not me, it's him. And so I always have to point toward him. It's all about him. It's for him. And he made me to honor him. And I believe he put me on this earth to serve him. He's given me what he's given me. He's given me certain gifts and talents, and I should use them and go all out to serve him with those. And, because he's my Lord, he's my Savior, and he's my King. And I was put here to worship him with my life. And so, I think, I know that was a long answer maybe than what you asked for, but that's what it is over and over for me is to trust him and then to take what he's given me and honor him with it. Yeah.
Bryan, thank you.
Thank you, Brock. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.